What if Vegeta never came to Earth? Dragon Ball Z alternate timeline. When I was a kid, I was really into Dragon Ball Z. It was one of the first animes I watched from start to finish and I really liked it. The characters, fights and story were all very entertaining and it stuck with me. Now, as I look back on it, I wonder, what if Vegeta never came to Earth? If you've watched the show, you'd know that Raditz, Goku's older brother, came to Earth and got pulverized by Piccolo's new ability, the two-finger get wrecked shot. Now, Raditz, Nappa, Vegeta were all Frieza's henchmen, and had these scouters that gave them directions, power level indicators, and allowed them to communicate with one another through space. I gotta say, they had excellent reception. Let's say, however, that Frieza would require Vegeta for another task. Frieza already heard of the Dragon Ball's existence through the scouters. However, it is unclear if he heard about them from Raditz's death or when Vegeta and Nappa came to Earth. I'd consider that he heard about them just like Vegeta and Nappa did. It would be terribly unwise and uncharacteristic for Vegeta and Nappa not to turn off all communications with Frieza when they went for Earth to get the Dragon Balls there. If Vegeta was otherwise preoccupied, he'd more than likely send Nappa over there. As they already knew that the Earthlings were weak and he'd want to get all the Dragon Balls, he'd surely trust Nappa to do it. After all, Nappa is very loyal to Vegeta. Now, here's where things would take a rather strange turn. The events of the entire Dragon Ball Z franchise would drastically change. Let's look at the best case scenario first. Here, Nappa would arrive on Earth at the same time as he did in the original story. Remember that Terror on Arlia was a filler episode in the show. Since Nappa is a very headstrong and proud Saiyan, he'd choose to fight the Z Fighters head-on, without using the Saibaman. This means that Yamcha would be alive to give a helping hand. I personally think that Yamcha really underperformed in his fight with the Saibaman in the original story, since he trained a lot with Tien and Krillin. Also, we didn't see him use either of his two trump cards, the Moaning Cat Fist and the Boomerang Tennis Ball. Now keep in mind that key attacks have an increased power level. Going all out, I think that the Z Fighters would have a chance of overpowering Nappa. Again, this is the best case scenario. So let's say that the Z Fighters used up their Senzu Beans to heal themselves and carry on fighting, while Nappa got progressively injured and tired. Goku would simply arrive at a later time after Nappa got defeated. I'd wager that if Nappa tried to go Great Ape, then Yajirobe would cut off his tail, like he did with Vegeta in the main timeline. If that was the case, the Z Fighters would have no reason to go to Namek since everyone would be alive and well. Goku would most likely talk about the training he had with King Kai, and Bulma would build a capsule that enhances the gravity. Since he wouldn't be in the hospital, he could train far earlier. However, he'd be starting out weaker since he never fought Vegeta and gotten a Zenkai boost from that fight. Zenkai boosts are pretty much huge power increases in the Dragon Ball Z universe and only Saiyans have them. Now, the other Z Fighters would train as well, knowing that there are other threats out there aware of Earth's Dragon Balls. On Namek, Frieza would already be there torturing and most likely killing all the Namekians. I'm sure that no Namekian would give Frieza the password for Porunga and eventually the balls would turn to stone, forcing Frieza to come to Earth. Goku, having received no Zenkai boost because he never fought Vegeta, would have a hard time reaching the same power levels he did as when he arrived on Namek in the original timeline. However, all the other Z Fighters would grow exponentially in strength, training with Goku and using the gravity chamber. Frieza would arrive on Earth after quite some time. He'd send out his goons, this time probably with Vegeta as one of them, to capture the Dragon Balls. I think that Dodoria, Zarbon and Vegeta would be defeated by the Z Fighters. Goku alone would surely defeat Vegeta and Dodoria simply due to the fact that he has now more time to train and he used the gravity chamber. Zarbon in his monster form may prove challenging, but again I think he'd really kick his ass because already when he used that 4x Kaioken and Kamehameha, which is pretty much the most popular energy attack he uses, he already had a power level that exceeded that of Zarbon. And he did that in the fight with Vegeta in the original timeline. Now, in the original timeline, Gohan and Krillin's power levels were drastically increased when they got to Namek after the fight with Vegeta and Nappa. Staying on Earth and training with Goku in the gravity chamber I think would further increase that power. I'd assume that they'd get to around the Doria's power level. In my opinion, even if the Z Fighters took care of all of Frieza's henchmen, there would be no way for any of them, including the case Piccolo fused with Kami, that they would ever defeat or pose a threat to Frieza's fourth form. In the original timeline, Goku got two major Zenkai boosts, one from fighting Vegeta and the other from getting his body absolutely trashed by Vegeta when Ginyu stole it on Namek. Without those two Zenkai boosts, I think Goku may end up with a power level of around 180,000, that's pretty much like half of what he had when he faced Ginyu in the original timeline. Even if he turned Super Saiyan, he still wouldn't manage to keep up with Frieza, since he'd lack the second Zenkai boost he got from when Ginyu stole his body. On the bright side, everyone else would be much more powerful. I think that if Piccolo fused with Kami, he'd be an even stronger guy than he was if he fused with Nail in the original timeline. But even then, he'd be far below Frieza's power level. In any case, Earth would have ended up yet another planet under Frieza's tyranny. It could be possible that Bulma would build a time machine and use it to go back in time to warn everyone that they'd lose this fight, but I just don't see how they could prevent the loss. Goku would simply be too weak for Frieza, and none of the Z fighters except Piccolo, fused with Kami of course, would even come close. Now for the worst case scenario. Nappa arrives on Earth as planned, he uses the Cyberman and Yamcha dies just like in the original timeline. The fight continues with the exception that this time Vegeta wouldn't be there to give Nappa the order to stop and wait for Goku. Without this order, all of the Z fighters would have been wiped out. Goku would arrive to find everyone dead. He'd stop Nappa pretty easily and head to Namek for the Dragon Balls there. Now, since this is the worst case scenario, let's say that he took Bulma and flew with the Namekian ship, the one without gravity chamber. While he would train on the way there, he would be pretty weak. Once on Namek, I'm positive he'd be strong enough to take care of Frieza's minions. He'd have a hard time with them, sure, but I think in the end he'd manage to get them. Especially if he fought one-on-one or if he got some help from Nail. Now keep in mind, if Goku arrived here just as Krillin and Gohan did in the original timeline, it is highly probable that he would encounter the Elder Namek, which would unlock his full potential. With his full potential, I think he'd be as strong, or nearly as strong as he was in the main timeline when he faced Ginyu. Now, if he stayed for long on Namek and say Frieza got his Ginyu squad to come over and help him get the Dragon Balls, Goku would be in really big trouble. I'm sure he could defeat Riku, Bertha, Geese and Guldo with his unlocked power and probably with Nail as his backup. But Ginyu would still take his body and I'm sure he'd just defeat or try to defeat Nail. In any case, I don't think Goku would get his body back and he'd get stuck in Ginyu's body. Frieza would get the Dragon Balls, nobody would tell him how to summon the dragon, and he'd probably destroy the planet, killing pretty much everyone there, including Goku and Bulma. He'd probably head for Earth to try his luck there. Now, even if Goku and Bulma survived, there's no way of, with Goku and Ginyu's body, that he'd come even close to match Frieza. So it all ends here for our friends. Let's go yet another route, the middle route. Let's say that Goku would wait for Bulma to build the gravity chamber and go to Namek afterwards. He'd train and he'd go and see the Elder Kai and he'd get a huge power increase and he'd already be very strong. But he wouldn't be there to see Krillin dying and he wouldn't transform to a Super Saiyan and again he'd get pretty much beat by Frieza. In the end, Vegeta's arrival to Earth was extremely important in the fight against Frieza. No Vegeta would mean that Frieza pretty much would conquer Earth without much problems and continue to torture countless worlds. Well, that's it for my what if tale. I hope you enjoyed it. See you guys later.